Hello, and welcome to Unexplain It to Me.
where we unexplain religious dogma.
I'm Ryan.
And I'm Dan.
How you doing today, Dan?
Oh, I'm hanging in there. It's nice weather, and
Can't complain.
can't complain. Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, today we're going to talk about the God of the Gaps. Yeah, so I know we kind of talked about this in one of the other podcasts, but do you know what the God of the Gaps argument is?
No, you mentioned it. I probably mm'd it, and then in the last 3 weeks, it probably is gone to a place in my mind that will be unretrievable for forever, basically.
Well, let me refresh your memory.
All right.
God of the Gaps, basically, is mostly referred to as society as a whole, and it's knowledge. So basically, things that are unexplained are explained by, well, God did it, basically. So what it is, thousands of years ago, before we knew the earth was round, the earth was flat. And why was it flat? Well, because God wanted it that way. And the sun rotated around the earth. And why did it do that? Well, because God wanted it that way. So basically, any gap in knowledge with like a baseless assertion is just because God wanted it that way. So that's essentially the God of the gaps. And I think it's applicable to people on a personal scale too. Like the reason why I brought it up in our first podcast was because, like I said, I did not pay attention at all in high school, and mostly because my interest in science was, well, it exists because God wants it to, so I don't care how it works.
Yeah, it's any unknown. He has an answer, so why do I need it?
So yeah, that's essentially what the God of the gaps is. So basically, back in the day, when God was the answer to most things, do you think having an answer impeded on people's curiosity for finding a real answer?
Probably for the general public, yeah, until you get to the Greek scholars and the people who either one didn't believe that or wanted concrete evidence to either back that up or dispute it, I guess. Because I'm not too deep into history, but I know that the Greeks were clearly some of the original and strongest philosophers in the early days of written and oral history, I guess. So I would assume at that point, and for the most part, probably before then, maybe a few, but maybe not enough technology or evidence to dispute it, I guess,
Yeah, and life back then was, I'll say, simpler. I don't know, really simpler. Like, you probably could die from exposure.
You live to 20, like but I know what you mean. In a philosophical way, it was easier.
We weren't counting planets on other solar systems in the galaxy at that point. Like, simpler in that sense of stuff.
Yeah, I got you.
Now with what we know about science, and the God of the gaps is like smaller and smaller as we find out more things. And how I like to view it is as a puzzle, both for society and then each individual person has a puzzle. And like my puzzle when I was in high school was basically a few pieces, and then any piece that wasn't there was filled in with a weird shaped God piece that just seemed to fit. Where after I took interest in science and I started to learn more, you like put in more pieces, and I think society as a whole kind of does the same thing. Like back then, the puzzle was really wide open, and God played a huge role in every single piece. And then as we found out more, the God piece becomes smaller and smaller. Is there any reason to think that a God as an answer to an unknown in the universe is even justifiable?
From where I'm at now, I don't think so. But again, that's clearly biased as to my personal... it's a loaded question because you can't really say general without my preference. So, but I think no.
What I'm trying to get at is kind of that blissful ignorance thing. Like, it does it do someone good to not know something and not search for the answer and to just suffice it, God? Or can it be damaging?
I think it's damaging because it just totally stops the exploration of like the mind and even the physical realm, I guess. Sure, you can think of things and theorize theories and etc., but it also just stops the want of physically going out and searching for or disproving or looking for bones or looking through studying like the earth itself, its layers. Like, I think it's just I think it's, like you said, blissfully ignorant, but at the same time, I think it's damaging. Like, personally, I mean, I like to learn that stuff, whether or not I retain it. I like to just learn it, like.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting to me, like, why wouldn't we want to know the origin of the universe? Why don't we want to learn about black holes? And people will be like, well, there's no reason. Like, we're dead in 100 years. Like, it's just, I don't know. I feel like curiosity is just stopped, I guess, rather.
And I think it's funny that you said that we're dead in 100 years thing, because what I was going to say is, like, I think a human lifespan, no matter when you're born, puts you in a place of kind of ignorance of everything that happened before. Mm-hmm. So people born nowadays who had my mindset in high school where it's, I don't really care about science, God did it all. They don't realize what science has done to make their life the way it is today, like modern medicine and technology all came about because of science. And without the science, or without people working towards finding the truths to develop the sciences that would later lead to those, if people would have hundreds of years ago would have just been like, oh, God did it, and never really looked for real answers and discovered things and used those discoveries to advance civilization, I think saying, yeah, God did it is a hard stop. So in all honesty, even if there is a God, and that's a big if in that sentence, but I don't think it would be justifiable to put a God piece in a puzzle until you have evidence for it. Essentially cramming the wrong piece into there, even if it fits, the picture might not be like, I could come up with a bunch of bad analogies to compare it to the puzzle, but
no, and I think
basically just because you cram the piece in there doesn't mean that it belongs there. And when it's there, you aren't searching for the real piece that's supposed to go there.
And like you said, even if God did exist, like, why would you still not want to learn? Like,
why put the piece in before you know there's supposed to be a piece?
Why wouldn't you want to learn why he did it? It's not explained in the Bible. Like, why wouldn't you want to search for the answers? Or I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's just almost a cop-out. Like, I don't know. And like you said, too, about the difference between us in high school versus now. Like, it took, 40, 50 years to get from flying a flippin' aircraft to hit to the moon? Like, technology at the rate we're at now is, like, insane. Like, and if we didn't question these things, or if we didn't search for answers 200 years ago, like, where would we be now? We would be 200 years behind. Like, there's certain people who try to push those limits and boundaries on, like, the knowledge of what's accessible. And I mean, I'm grateful, and I think it's just interesting in general that the electricity, I don't understand how it works, like, but somebody did, and it's our lives now. Like, it's just insane. Someone was passionate to figure this out, like, it's crazy.
Because that's actually a good argument there, because the lightning rod, invented by Benjamin Franklin, lightning used to strike churches because they were the highest thing in the cities. And people, even in America, in the 1700s, 1600s even, thought that was an act of God, like, punishing them.
Smite,
Yeah. And then when he put up the lightning rods and all of a sudden these churches stopped getting struck or, like, destroyed by the lightning, the priests had a problem with it because they thought it was, like, literally trying to dismiss a message from God.
Yeah, veered off instead of its correct path.
It's crazy to think that people... I mean, granted, our technology's further now, so stuff like lightning rods seems like child's play.
Duh. But exactly. You have to place your spot in that history to
appreciate.
He didn't have a cell phone to Google what's going. Like, it's just it was a different time. Yeah,
And I think something else that should be mentioned too, kind of on the same thing, is a lot of people will say, like, well, I believe in science and God. I think it comes along with a lot of saying you believe science but not understanding it, like never having looked into it. Because a lot of people, and I've got a whole other talk for this, but a lot of people will, like, say they believe in the Big Bang or evolution, but they believe it was created by God. And I don't think they understand evolution or the Big Bang enough to understand the implications that go along with that and how it totally goes against what the Bible says. And it clearly shows for natural processes that don't require a God at all to do them. I think if you were to say we're here because God, instead of looking at the Big Bang up to the Earth and then looking at Earth and looking at evolution all the way to us, I think there's a lot of implications that people don't understand. And I think it comes from a lack of education from saying God did it instead of looking for it.
Or even in that same vein of only believing in certain sciences, like anti-vax, but you believe in the ER room. Like, you don't want to wear a mask, but your doctor needs to wear gloves so he doesn't infect you. Like you pick and choose what you
Yep.
what you
Like
want.
the people who live stream from their phone how the Earth is flat, but then that phone is sending the signal up to a satellite in
Yep.
space, and then it's
Yep.
beaming to it to
Exactly.
a tower, and then so everyone can see it.
It's pure ignorance, and
Yep.
it's clearly willful at this point.
So, using my puzzle metaphor,
Mm-hmm.
do you ever think we will have all the pieces, like all the knowledge there is to have?
No, sadly.
Yeah, I agree.
I wish, because basically after not becoming a Christian, my only desire in the afterlife is, and even if I was still Christian, would to just be basically presented like a third person view of everything, like real time history or like the past, just to see what happened. Like, I'm so curious as to like what did the asteroid look like, what that killed all the like I just my ultimate dream would just to be to get to experience that in like an omnipotent way, just watching it, because like just curiosity wise, like I don't know, that's what I wish.
Yeah. There's so much stuff that you've heard about,
Yeah.
but you'll never get to experience
Yep.
it.
And in the future, like even like 40 years, like just you can't imagine the technology. Like in a sense, I guess I wish for a god in that sense, like to
Yeah, so you could.
so I could do that. I want some omnipotent being to be able to cater to what I want, but at the same time, I don't want to hate a certain group of people just to be able to do that. Like
You don't want all the baggage.
yeah.
Yeah,
Just let
and
me
I know
view it.
I've heard like astrophysicists say like there's literally some history to the universe that just it doesn't exist anymore. Like we'll never know it
Yep.
because
You can
it
only
existed for only a period where the universe was so big or so hot.
Yep.
And then now that it's not that way, we'll never see it.
Yeah, and the light
there's some things that we just won't know.
Yep, and the light could have already passed to see that, because obviously look at a star, that doesn't
Yeah.
mean it's still lit. It's just the light hasn't got here. Like there's so many of those little nuanced things that
Yeah.
you missed that one piece, and that means you missed the corner of the puzzle, and you can speculate, but who knows what's in that bottom corner? It could have been anything.
So, second question to
Mm-hmm.
follow up on that: do you think we need all the pieces of the puzzle?
I mean, no, not really. I feel like we have a pretty good puzzle right now. Like,
Yeah,
sure, knowing more is fascinating and I guess fun, but I mean, most of it's the dire stuff is already explained. Almost. I mean, of course, there's more dire stuff that would be good for arguments and proof, but I feel like most of the stuff now is just like interesting. Like you can like, oh, we figured out that this existed at this point. Like, dude, that's cool. But to obviously some scholar, that means something more, and they can figure it out. But like, we're on Mars, like exploring,
Yeah.
and like we're learning about that. Like, we don't have all the answers, but I mean, we're shooting for what we can do with what we have. So
and I think I wrote these questions a while ago, but I think what I was trying to get at was that word "need." And I don't think we need all the pieces either. But I think obviously the bigger or the more pieces we get, the better the picture we get, the better it will be for society.
yep.
Kind of a well, they're all subjective questions. But, do you think people willfully disbelieve science to keep the God of the Gaps, whether or not they know it's the God of the Gaps? Or do you think they just don't understand the science and in turn think that there's some sort of controversy about it so they can justify their beliefs?
I mean, it's probably like a pie chart, like
Yeah.
90%.
Or a Venn diagram.
Yeah, like 90% of it is probably willfully trying to stop. Like, they don't want to teach evolution. They only want creationism. They don't want you to learn about sex. They like it's a clear stopping point to curb your knowledge. The problem is there's also stuff that's incredibly complicated that, like, even when like a physicist or any scientist in the field basically dumbs it down to like a children's book, you're still like, what? Like, so it's not just totally one, but I think it's mostly one. Like, that's how you keep power. That's how you clearly like rile up your masses. If they're uneducated, you can easily trigger their fight or flight, or their things like that. So key to that is keeping that part of the diagram very big, but also sprinkled in like, yeah, dude, we don't understand any of
Little
that.
the founding myth, which is like proving that America was not at all based on Christian principles when they were making the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. And it's funny because all the talking points he brings up were things that I was like raised in that household of like, oh yeah, our laws are based on the 10 Commandments. And then when you read the 10 Commandments, you're like, nope. And then when you look at the history of all the people who are writing it, like George Washington almost never attended church. None of them mentioned God like as like a faith-based belief.
Yeah.
A lot of them mentioned it as like a way to control the undereducated masses. Like none of them really believed in God, but it's something you grew up hearing.
Yep.
So I feel like people almost don't want to know more about it because they've heard everything they want to hear, and even if it's wrong, they don't.
It's selective at this point.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I do feel like it's obviously a mix of people just haven't taken interest in learning more, but I think a lot of people feel like they've heard enough, and whether or not it's right, that's what they base their beliefs on.
Yep. We literally left a nation because of religion.
Yeah, and I think that's what a lot of people don't understand. When we came over here, it was because, was it King George? Was it like a tyrant?
Yeah, yep.
He was a tyrant, and he used religion to like control the people, so they left. Like, that doesn't sound very good for Christianity when you're trying to escape Christianity.
we're just forcing ourselves back into that spot. Like, people look at history through a different lens if they want it to fit their narrative. Like, the whole, did the party switch? Well, duh. Like, of course the party switched. Abraham Lincoln was a Republican, but what Republicans now, or even 20 years after, wanted to give up slaves? Like, you have to look at the context. Like, it's clearly deeper than that. Like, but the problem is they look back and see that some of these founding fathers were deists. Like, they believed in a God. That doesn't mean it was Jesus or anything. Like,
and that's what he mentions in the book a lot too, is that a lot of these people probably were deists. They believed in a God to a sense, but it wasn't the Christian God, and it wasn't like the rule following, I'll obey me kind of God. It was more like a pantheist, like God is God is the universe, kind of thing.
I guess I'm not sure when or if it was even in like the Declaration, but like freedom of religion, and this key part they just totally try to black out with a permanent marker that says freedom from religion. Like,
you can't have one without the other. You need them both. All right, well, that's all we had planned for today. So I just wanted to end with that religion teaches us that we are broken and evil, and only through a deity can we be who we were meant to be. But I just want you to know that you are not broken and you are not evil. You are doing the best to figure out this confusing world, and it's okay to have questions and to change your beliefs and admit that you don't have all the answers, because you are not alone.